Now, for what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 14, printed in Part B of House Report number 115-295, offered by Mr. Rodney Davis of Illinois.
Pursuant to Resolution 500, the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Davis, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Illinois.
Mr. Chairman, I yield myself as much time as I may consume. I rise today to offer this amendment which would prevent the Grain Inspections, Packers, and Stockyards Administration from using any funds to revoke service agreements, also known as exceptions, in place before April 14, 2017. At its core, this amendment, supported by my colleague, Congresswoman Sherry Bustos, is about reinforcing congressional intent, preventing further mismanagement, and promoting good customer service, corrections we must make due to a bureaucratic failure at GIPSA. Mr. Chairman, in the U.S., grain handlers are assigned a USDA-approved inspection agency based upon the grain handler's geographic location. To utilize official inspection services, grain handlers must go through their assigned official inspection agency unless they apply for and receive an exception from GIPSA. Only with an exception may grain handlers receive services from an alternate inspection agency outside their assigned territory. During the drafting of the 2015 Agriculture Reauthorizations Act, one of my priorities was to provide for more opportunities for these exceptions to be considered and granted. That legislation passed this chamber by a voice vote and included a provision which created a new process by which grain handlers could petition GIPSA for an exception. When it was signed into law, I felt the provision accomplished my goal to provide grain handlers with greater opportunities to utilize exceptions. In July of 2016, GIPSA reaffirmed my initial pleasure with the provision when it released its final rule governing the new exception process, stating GIPSA currently has 95 agreements for agencies to operate outside their assigned territories, and GIPSA will continue to honor those agreements. So imagine my surprise and disappointment when in April of this year, GIPSA contradicted itself and released a directive opening a backdoor for official grain inspection agencies to revoke those 95 service agreements. As a result of this directive, an official inspection agency can now unilaterally request that GIPSA or the USDA revoke a service agreement, with neither the grain handler nor the alternate inspection agency having a say in the process. This runs contrary to the original intent of the legislation, which was to provide grain handlers with greater opportunities to utilize exceptions, not less. By supporting my amendment today, we can temporarily halt this misinterpretation. As it stands, GIPSA's interpretation of the law has caused many grain handlers to lose their service agreements, even though these grain handlers have operated under these exceptions for years. This includes my constituent, Scott Doherty of Top Flight Grain Cooperative in Monticello, Illinois. Scott has been using the same grain inspection service for more than 20 years when GIPSA sent him a notice giving him less than 30 days to prepare for a change in service. The issue at stake is a prime example of bureaucratic failure. In our current inspection process, the grain handlers are the customers, yet they are not given a say under the new directive, not granted enough time to plan for the disruption, and they are the last to find out about this drastic change in service. They deserve better, Mr. Chairman. By supporting this amendment, we can reclaim congressional intent, prevent GIPSA from revoking the remaining service agreements in place before April 14th of this year, an outcome Congress never intended. GIPSA's interpretation of the law may be wrong, but I do want to thank the USDA for working with me to ensure my amendment is not misinterpreted and accomplishes what I've sought to do, and that is to prevent GIPSA from revoking the remaining service agreements. I look forward to working with them on finding a more permanent solution in future legislation. And with that, I urge all of my colleagues to vote yes on this amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Is there anyone who claims time in opposition? If not, the question is on. Gentleman from Illinois has reserved. Gentleman.
I reserve. All right, I'd like to yield my colleague as much time as he may consume.
All right. Gentleman from Alabama is recognized.
Yes, I rise in support of this amendment. I agree. It appears that the Grain Inspection, Packers, and Stockyards Administration, known as GIPSA, is not currently implementing a provision from the 2015 Grain Standards Act reauthorization. Despite the efforts of my colleagues to try and work with the USDA to correct this interpretation, the agency continues down a path of unraveling a long-standing agreement that have allowed a designated official grain inspector to carry out inspections in another geographic area. I hope this amendment sends a clear message to the department that they are not following congressional intent and they should reverse course. I thank the gentleman for his continuous work on this issue, and I urge my colleagues to support this amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank Chairman Adderholt for his support, and I urge a yes vote, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Questions on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Illinois. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed.